Hi, I'm Dave, owner of Rulesman Suspension, and today I reveal something you never seen before. Never. This is the revolutionary kit for mountain bike suspension setup. But before I reveal what's in here, let me repeat again, which is the first and most important step when starting any mountain bike suspension setup: reading the SAG. SAG not only controls the vehicle riding height when you ride from ground, but SAG plays a big role in traction, bottom mount resistance and heat management. How does? Well, let's take an example, a very simple graph, rear wheel force travel diagram with a medium progressive bike, which would plot something like this. We got the force on one axle, we got the travel on the other axle, and if I draw the line of a really nice made bike, it will be something like this. Well, we have the bottom out force up here, then we've got the SAG, let's say 25%, so this is gonna be the point alpha, which is our SAG, 25. The shape of this curve, it's given by the frame leverage, and we can't really change it, but what we can do, we could move the whole curve, we could shift it upwards or downwards by changing the SAG. So on this bike, I said, I place the SAG at 25%. And what happens if I change the SAG? Let's say I reduce the SAG from 25 to 20. The point alpha would move this direction. So this is gonna be alpha reduced, and the new curve is gonna be something like this, with a drastic change at the bottom out, lot mid-range support, and a slightly different but sort of not really feelable difference at the beginning of the stroke. So you have a little bit of reduction of SAG and a lot of mid-stroke support increase and a lot of bottom out. Let's do the opposite. Let's make a softer SAG, a bigger SAG of alpha. So from 25 we go to 30. I'm gonna do it in red this time. So from 25 we go to 30. This is 30% of SAG, and the new curve is gonna be like this. So the bottom out force, it's way weaker, smaller, the mid-range is less, and so on. Are you sure you are setting SAG in the right way? I don't think so, because you, all of you, are reading the rear wheel SAG by measuring a distance on the shock shaft body, between eyelets, whatever. And well, that's totally wrong for two scientific, irrefutable reasons. The first is that mountain bike rear wheels works on a linkage system, and a linkage is like an amplifier of the shock movements. The amplifier factor 2.5 to 1 or 3 to 1, and that means if your downhill bike has a shock of 70 millimeters of shock stroke, it will have 210 of wheel travel, and that's 1 to 3. Pretty easy to understand. Not actually a big problem itself. It's a good, well-designed system, because we can't have 210 millimeter stroke shocks within a bike which is very small, so that's fine, nothing to argue with it. Of course, the lower the ratio is, the better the bike will ride, because there is gonna be less input, less stress on the shock to control. So a bike with 1 to 2.5 is better than a bike that 1 to 3. But anyway, no problem with the leverage ratio system, but the problem comes out when you are reading the SAG in that really tight place, which is the shock body. Most of the time, if not all, you are making mistakes reading down there, which is very tight. Frankly, it's almost impossible to be precise down there, but let's say nothing important, you misread by 1 or 2 millimeters. And well, that's a very small mistake. Your bike has 210, right? So who cares? But nah, you're wrong. Because as said, this leverage ratio here is the amplifier of anything, and it also amplifies your reading error which you make down there at the shock body. So that small error of 2 millimeters is going to be amplified 3 times at the wheel axle, and so it's going to be, let's say you made 2 millimeters of error reading, amplified 3 times, it's going to be 6, and 6 out of 210, 6 out of 210, it's 3%. So you're actually reading a sag number. Let's say you want to read 30%, you make a small mistake, you're actually increasing the sag by 3, plus or minus. So your sag could be somewhere between 27 and 33, plus minus 3 from what you read at the shock. And that's crazy. And this is the way you believe you're acting precisely. I mean, this is your precision. You write somewhere between here. Well, who cares? I mean, the front fork is pretty easy. You read the numbers, it's 1 to 1, there is no ratio. But the rear end, you are always wrong because you make mistakes, and the amplifying factor will amplify your mistakes. You got me? But yeah, I want to be really kind today. Let's say you are an ace of precision and get this measurement damn good, accurately within 0.001 millimeters, you know what I mean? You are still getting the wrong sag because bikes are all progressive nowadays, and so the leverage ratio is not constant through the whole travel range. So when you're reading 30 at the first bit of the shock movement, it's not 30 at the wheel. It's not. But let's see a practical example to explain this, because it may be a little bit different to understand. I mean, my custom enduro bike, where's the bike? Yeah, that's the bike, and yeah, talk later about this, but yeah, this is my Titan. It has a 65 millimeter stroke. So let me write 65 somewhere here, and it has 155 at the wheel. Yeah, the leverage ratio is not really 1 to 3, it's a little bit less, but it's a very good bike. So let's say I want to set up my bike using your method. So using the method that I should read the sag on the shock. How would I proceed following your classic method, which is wrong? Pretty easy. I would calculate the 30%, which is the sag that I want, out of the 65 millimeters of shock stroke. And the 30% of 65, it's 19.7 millimeters. So that's my goal point. And I would adjust the shock, change the spring, or put more air, whatever, even if I just use coil shocks. So I would change the spring until I get 19.7 at the shock, right? Nah, it's totally wrong. And let's see what's happening if I compress the bike 19.7. To show you what's going on here, I use the software. I won't do it with a real bike. It would be impossible to explain. So I use the software, which is the gold standard for frame makers and linkage designers. So let's see what's happening compressing the shock in the software. So let's move it, let's compress it. I can see I can move the wheel, I can compress the shock with the software, like animate the thing. And let's going up until, yeah, now I am at 19.7 millimeters as per your method and calculation. And check this out. Let's see how much the wheels moves up. 52 millimeters. And 52 out of 155 is actually not the 30% as we aimed. 52 out of 155 is 34% of sag. So if I set up the sag by moving 30% the shock, I actually getting 34% of wheel movement. And that's a 4% sag difference from the aimed 30% which I wanted by following your method. But yeah, if you don't like software, if you don't like what I'm saying, no matter, try yourself with the real bike or with the pricey software if you can afford it and know how to use it. But either way, you will discover the brutal reality. The sag measured on the shock, it's always wrong, and it's usually less than the real sag at the rear wheel axle on progressive frames. And I'll say it again, one and last time, the way you measure sag, it's wrong. It does not count for bike progression, and it be even more fucked up by small reading errors which you make at the shock, amplified by 3 times by the leverage. So stop doing it. Stop reading the sag in the wrong way and in the wrong place. And here it comes, the solution. This is the only correct method to measure the real wheel sag, and it's to read one-to-one movement of it, exactly as we do on all front forks, using the real stroke there, one-to-one, no leverage, no amplifying factors, nothing, just the pure right measure. So today I'm totally stoked and proud to present the Virtual Fender mountain bike kit and the Slacker system. And this kit comes from a joint partnership between myself and John, the founder of Slacker in America. And this is the kit. The kit is composed by a digital measuring computer, the remote display, all the mountain bike adapters, and the Virtual Fender, all in a nice case. And how does it work? Well, that's pretty simple. To measure the sag of the rear wheel, we need a fixed reference point over the axle from where we can measure the axle movement upwards. This is what motocross riders have been doing for the last 50 years or even more. They were measuring sag from a fixed point of the bike to the axle that was the real fender usually. So how do we use the Slacker kit? Pretty easy. Press the mountain bike axle insert into your bike axle hex and place the Slacker on the axle insert. Clamp the Virtual Fender on the seat post, extend the retractable cable and hook it on the sliding loop. Mount the wireless remote on the handlebar, open the virtual remote display app on your smartphone, enter the real travel of your bike, lift the bike, set the 0, mount the bike on a flat surface, no brakes on, full gear kit on, neutral position, and read directly live the wheel sag in millimeters or the sag percentage. You can switch between the raw measurement or percentage mode by tapping the button on the application. No more time lost to calculate sag percentages out of the measured millimeters. If the value that you read is right, you are good to go. If the value is far from required value, you have to add or remove air if you are on air suspension, and swap to softer or harder spring, or slightly adjust the preload if you ride on coil. This tool is not limited on the rear wheel only. You can also precisely read the sag of the front fork, and you can do a lot of other stuff, but let's say how we do it. If you want to read the front fork, place Slacker on front fork lowers by using the X insert of the Slacker universal clamp. Strap the universal fork adapter to the upper fork tube using one of the included cinch straps. Extend the retractable cable and hook it on the universal fork adapter. Enter again the total travel of your fork in the application. Lift the bike, set the 0, mount the bike, and read the sag. Boom, done. But yeah, that's pretty straightforward and easy. It has never been so precise and so easy to read the sag. And I'm actually doing this since probably 10 years. So I kept this thing secret for you for a lot of time, but now it's time to change the world again with something unique. And this is it. Well, so what you can do with this kit? Just measuring the sag? Well, yes, but you can also do some other stuff, very important stuff. Such as you can verify the real total travel of your bike. Unfortunately, I've seen several cases of bikes sold for 160 travel, for instance, rear, while in the reality the travel was a lot less, like 145, 150. How does? I mean, yeah, how could we check it? Place the bike on a stand so the rear wheel is off the ground, attach the Slacker tool and Virtual Fender as if you were to measure the standard sag method. Then you attach the remote somewhere handy and visible, then you set the Slacker to 0. You take the rear shock off the bike You calculate the length of the shock at the full compression, for instance. Nominal shocks eye to eye, on this case is 205, 65, it's travel. So the bottom out length will be 205 minus 65, which equals 140. Now, manually compress the swing arm until the distance between the shock and the two mounting points of the shock it's 140, and then you read the maximum travel of your bike. I put a note here for you. You cannot do it by compressing the shock installed without aero spring, since all shocks, aero coil, doesn't matter, they have bottom out bumpers inside or outside, and these are very hard to compress, so you have to remove the shock if you want to see the exactly real travel of your bike. But with the virtual fender and Slacker, you can do also more. It's a multitask tool. You can verify the bearings, the state of the bearings of your swing arm, shock, and the friction of your fork, for instance, also. And how does? Well, with the bracketing technique. Stand up on the bike like a frozen man, super still, and you ask a spotter to lift the front end of your bike, and then you let him sit on the spring itself, and then you note the first reading. Then you ask your spot bra to compress your handlebar and let the fork to return up to the neutral position itself. Note the second reading. These two readings will be different for sure. The closer these two readings are, the less friction the fork has. If your fork has a delta, so the difference between the two readings of like 10 millimeter range, man, it's time to invest in a better fork or investigate what the hell is going on with that friction party. But yeah, a delta of 2 or 3 millimeters, it's recognized very good. And 3 to 5 or 6 would actually start to highlighting to you that it's time to change the oil maybe, or investigate what's going on. But anyway, you are not riding a very high traction fork. The same bracketing technique can be used for checking the rear swing arm frictions too. So you do the bracketing on rear wheel and you measure how much delta you get between Alpha and Bravo. And for rear coil shocks and good bikes with the new frame bearings and everything new, perfect, you should get always a delta of 1 millimeters. That means basically you always getting the same measure, and the bike returns to the same position all the times, no matter if your spot bra is compressing your saddle or is lifting up your saddle. If this delta is way far off, let's say 3 or 4 more millimeters, some issues are present. It may either in your shock with a lot of friction, or the bearings of your swing arm are actually gone. But it ain't finished yet. There's also more about this unique tool. A dedicated pro application is available and it's called Service Assistant. This app is dedicated to the most serious rider or racer, and this app is actually storing all the bike's names, travel and front rear travels, all the settings, and as well for each day on the track you're doing some tests. So here, yeah, let's get my phone and I show you. I mean, if you see here, I've got all the bikes here stored. I can open one of those and you can see I've got all my details, the low speed, high speed, compression rebound, tire pressure, and so on. You can add the travel for each bike inside, so each time you open the software and connect this Slacker, you don't have to re-enter the total travel of the bike, the front fork or the rear wheel. So you can save measurements, so you can do a lot of stuff with the application. By the way, it will calculate an average value of the leverage ratio. You can also convert the percentage of sag between percentage mode and millimeters mode, so it's all automatic. Right, this is all for today. Slacker and Virtual Fender by Slacker, United States and Rules One. I'm very proud of bringing to the mountain bike world another true game-changing concept that improves the way you will set up your suspension. No more sad reading errors, no more wrong sag figures due to the progressive leverages. Yeah, I mean, I truly believe all of you need one of these The first and most critical step in suspension tuning is to get the correct sag. And this kit accomplishes the task in the most perfect manner. You know, might say, if you don't measure, you are guessing, and best for nothing. And yeah, thanks, it's all for today. Hey, hold on. You can buy this masterpiece on getslacker.com if you live abroad in America, because I'm speaking from Finale Ligure, or if you are here in Europe, whatever, somewhere here, rulesman.com, and stop riding the wrong sag. Get some now.